Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, I'm very excited about our guest today. Our guest today is Penney Peirce. You can find out more about her and her wonderful work at penneypeirce.com. That's PENNEYPEIRCE.com. So Penney is a respected clairvoyant, empath, visionary author, and popular lecturer and trainer. Penney is the author of 10 books, including her most recent book, Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity. Many of you may have read Frequency, The Power of Personal Vibration, and Leaper Perception, The Transforming Power of Your Attention. Welcome, Penney Peirce.
Thanks, Catherine. How are you?
I'm great. Now, I have to start by asking a personal question, which is something that people ask me, which is, when did you realize that you were intuitive? Like, when was your first sort of understanding of that?
I think, I started as an artist and a graphic designer. So I didn't think about the fact that I was intuitive in order to do that. I just thought that was the job, But maybe it was in around 1977, I started actually taking courses in clairvoyance development, which was possible at that time in Marin County, California. And that's where I really realized that the visualization ability I had was connected to intuition. And that things would pop up out of my imagination that were actually accurate, things. And then that became so fascinating that I sort of moved on beyond the design work, although I still do it, and started full-time into metaphysics.
Very cool. Now, you and I have both written books about intuition. My book, Unlimited Intuition Now, talks about the 4 primary psychic gifts: claircognizance. That's my primary gift, is psychic knowing, which is the same gift that Edgar Cayce had: clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. And your book, The Intuitive Way, The Definitive Guide to Increasing Your Awareness. I think that in this day and age, people really are wanting to open up their soul perception. So I really appreciate having a like-minded person on the show. But let's talk about your latest book, Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity. Penney Peirce, what is transformation really?
I've only written about 5 books about it. But I think it is, the more I've delved into it, it seems to me to be about a huge shift in our perception from linear way of thinking, which we're ingrained in, we're immersed in, we all think it's a beginning, middle, and end, and cause and effect thinking, and past, present, future. It's all on a line. Everything's storylines and timelines and all of that. But we're moving into a situation where everything is so accelerated that having a line and having gaps between events or goals, it's too slow. And so we're having this shift into what I call the spherical and holographic perception, which is kind of, I call it, it's like you feel a ball around you. Your reality is a big ball, and you're in the center of it. And there's nothing outside the ball, And so as you shift out of the old and into the new, reality actually starts changing. You start thinking of yourself differently. So instead of identifying with your left brain and body, you start to realize, hey, I'm the soul, and I'm here now, and then all the rules from the spiritual realm start to occur in the physical realm, because you also realize that spirit is inside matter. And that's what the acceleration on the planet right now is doing, I think, is causing us to have this, it's not just bleed through really, but it's an actual merger where we feel spirit and matter together, you know, sourcing each other instantly, you know. So, and that's what I think the transformation is.
Very exciting. Now, Penny Peirce, what's the difference between invisibility and transparency?
Well, I think when I started thinking about transparency, there's a kind of a shallow way of thinking about it that everybody has, you know, had for centuries, which is that you can see through the physical matter, that you could become invisible yourself and no one would know you were there. But, you know, that is not what I mean by transparency. When you're really, truly transparent, the soul has taken over the entire body and personality, and you really do radiate light. But your body's still there. You know, you're still in the physical world, but the physical world becomes very malleable. It's really evident that it's made of consciousness and energy, and you can affect it with your thought, with your feelings, and it's immediately responsive, you know. And so I think in the book I talk about horizontal transparency and vertical transparency, and the way we think about that word today really is in the horizontal or physical world, where we're about freedom of information. We're still actually in the information age, at the very tail end of it, you know. And so things are still about information. And so with transparency, we want the truth. We want to see through the lies and the subterfuges and the fake news, you know, and all of that. Because we're like, I think people are sick of lies. They want to really the authentic stuff. And so when it's still about information, it's sort of a shallow thing still. It's not quite the full transparency yet. But the full transparency then is the vertical thing, where the soul integrates into the physical world and everything becomes one, and then suddenly the ball occurs. So it's like a shift of an inner geometry, really, of the way we see the world. We don't realize we have this geometric way of perceiving things. But with linear, it's, you know, definitely here's a line and there are points along the line and there are gaps between the points, and it takes willpower to cross between the points. That could be a goal you have, or that could be between you and me, you know, at different points of the country, you know, and as you start to have the spherical, the transformed reality, I'm a ball that includes you. Wherever you are, you're in my ball. There's no time and space really in there. It's the present moment. And same with you include me. So we have this kind of a merged reality where we can really know each other, I mean, as souls. And then multiply that by all the people we know and even the people we don't know. And you get this kind of big collective consciousness forming, you know. So, I mean, there are so many ways that perception is going to change as we become transparent. You know, it's going to be very exciting.
Now, Penny, what is opaque reality?
Yeah, I decided that, you know, if we're moving toward a transparent reality, then what we're in right now is opaque, meaning it's hard to see through it. You know, it is thick and sticky and sort of, you know, foggy, and it's hard for us to really see what's true. We're going by the left brain's perceptions, which often are lodged in the past. You know, the left brain has that tendency to formulate and define and compartmentalize and analyze. And so when you have like say a scary experience, it just shuts down around that and says, no, we can never have that again, or anything like it, you know, and it makes a rule. And then if you have in your new present moment some kind of experience that's even remotely like that other one, it will react and bring the past experience into the present moment, overlay it, and it may have really nothing to do with what's actually going on. And we do that, I mean, all the time, you know. when you're transparent, you're totally in the moment without preconceptions. And whatever's appropriate in that moment can then occur, and you can understand things much more, fully, I would say,
And Penny, what do you see as the difference between a secret and a mystery?
Uh-huh. Um, they seem like they could be about the same thing, but secrets, I think, are based on often fear, like something that you're ashamed of, that you really don't want people to see. And, so we try to hide it. And there comes around that all this thing like wearing a mask and having all kinds of subterfuges and ways of behaving that aren't really authentic. And so it just, the more you keep secrets, the more it kind of builds up layers around it, and then you really become opaque at that point. But a mystery is kind of like, you ask a question about how things work, and then you get an answer, but then beyond that's another question and another question and another question. It's like the wonderful mysteries of the universe and how things actually work. It's not a secret. It's just part of the collective unconscious that you haven't accessed yet and included in your sphere, So it's not negative in any way. It's just kind of that carrot in front of the donkey, that leads you forward into the mystery of life and of self, really.
Okay, now let's talk about clearing clutter. I was just at my mother's house, and I'm like, we have got to clear this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a massive fan of feng shui. We've had feng shui masters here on the Natural Healing Show. So can you explain the importance of clearing your clutter for becoming transparent?
Right. I think you're talking about physical clutter, which is, I think, symbolic of internal and mental clutter, and so what I was talking about in the book is ideas that prevent the flow of the soul through the personality. These would be, I call them sometimes contractions. It's like fear-based thinking, negative thinking, I call it sometimes soul blockers. It could be something like pretending to not know, feigning ignorance, for instance. It's like, oh, I don't know, and so of course you can't know then, it just keeps you from your own genius. There's a million of these things that we commonly do that stop our soul from being present in the moment with us. And so the more you can look into those things and see that, oh, wait, doesn't actually feel very good. I don't really like feeling stuck or feeling blocked, and having all this energy build up inside my different places of my body. And so then when you look at it and go into it, you can find out I always think it's a partial perception that causes these things. You don't see the whole picture, and then you kind of get stuck on, you inhale and you forget to exhale again, and then you think this is the way life is. And so clearing the internal clutter is removing all the wet blankets that are between you and the actual experience of who you truly are, But then your physical clutter is like often just manifests out of the internal pattern of clutter that we have in ourselves, of avoidance, of not, allowing ourselves to be fully productive and creative, for instance. So I don't know, it's just my bias. I know a lot of people who have clutter are highly creative, but for me, I need kind of order. I need open spaces. I need places where my eye can rest, physically. And it's a similar thing. We need an internal space that's quiet, right? A meditative internal space where we can get out of that chatter of the left brain and be able to access the right brain and our intuition, which is, I think, the voice of the soul.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I totally agree. Penny, what is radical trust And how does trust in general connect with transparency?
Yeah. That's the big, trust connects with everything, really, if you think about it. It connects with intuition. If you don't trust yourself and trust what you get and trust the flow of what comes to you when it comes to you, you'll never open your intuition. But radical trust to me is sort of an all-encompassing kind of trust. It's not just one thing. It's trust your own self, that you are the soul, that you do know what you're doing at some level, because you're so interconnected with all other souls and everybody's helping each other evolve and you have lots of help. So just trust that's the nature of things, right? And then trust the audience, trust the other people, that, if they have a choice, they would like to help you. That's the true nature of the soul, mutual support. And then you trust the flow itself, which to me is like the collective consciousness of all beings. And that to me includes trees and animals and bugs and everything. That is all evolving together. We are evolving together, and so we don't leave anybody behind. Nobody can be excluded from this flow. And it knows what it's doing, and so, like, yesterday I had an automobile accident. It just, not my fault, but I was agitated. And so I was in the right vibe to get hit. But the car next to me, a guy pulled out from the side, and the car next to me laid on his horn and brakes. And then the guy missed him and hit me in the left lane. And I'm okay. But it was so interesting because I got out of my car, I was very rattled. I got out of the car, and standing suddenly next to me was this, nice looking man in a black State Farm auto insurance t-shirt. And I thought, wait, am I in a TV commercial? Like, what's going on? So he's very helpful. What would you like? And I called the police, and then they told me how everything was going to work. And then 4 more men came out of stores around there. We saw the whole thing. We'll be witnesses for you. And then somebody else called the tow truck. And it turns out the man who in the t-shirt was the guy next to me who avoided being hit. And he turned out to be the mayor of the town where I was, and all the cops personally. And I thought, well, gee, this is like a real demonstration, of when you allow yourself to feel trust and be supported, that things just materialize in that way. And so, the car will get fixed and I'm fine. But it was just almost humorous. And the last name of the man was Penny when he called the cops. And I was like, oh my God. You couldn't have written this in a, TV show. It was so funny.
Yeah. Einstein said the most important question is whether or not you consider the universe to be a friendly place.
Yeah.
And I think that when we know and experience that the universe is a friendly place, then it's a lot easier to let go and allow the trust.
Yes.
Yeah, you remind me, it's been a long time since I had a car wreck, but the last time I had a car wreck, I was just driving down the street, minding my own business, and the car came out of nowhere and sideswiped me. And it was similar to yours. It was the funniest thing in the world. So I pull over, oh my gosh, and it turned out the guy who hit me was a waiter in a salad bar restaurant where I used to go all the time. So the guy who hit me jumps out of the car. He rushes over and hugs me and says, "Catherine, are you okay?" Like you said, it was this very, so accidents happen, but, the love was there. The support was there. It's like, okay, the cars are just stuff. We'll fix the stuff.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So,
but it's kind of that thing about trust, though. It does result in you feeling that the universe is a friendly place, even though there's chaos going on all over, and meanness, and you know, small thinking. But your reality is based on what you think, you know, what you decide to be the rules of your reality and your inner geometry, you know. So I don't know. I think that, you know, trust is like, when you trust yourself, you become authentic. You allow yourself to be humble and simple. You don't have to put on a show for people, and it's so much easier. You know, it's not to be constantly worrying about how everybody's going to see you and what's going to happen, that everything's in its right order. You know, how do I know that accident wasn't like some kind of a crescendo of energy that just needed to have a kind of chiropractic adjustment from on high, you know, and like shoot out so that my own energy could flow better after this? You know, there's always a higher function, I think, of things.
Yeah. You know, when I'm doing healing work, Penny, you know, the most powerful healing of all is to let go and allow God to heal you.
Right.
And
Right.
when you let go and let God, it doesn't mean that you don't participate, doesn't mean that you don't go to the doctor or take your vitamins or go for a walk or do your stretch or do your inner work, but you stop using your ego to hold so tightly and try and control the experience.
Yeah.
And I know that when I studied medical intuition, you know, the admonition was show up and get out of the way. And what that means is that you become fully present, and then you allow your ego mind to just get out of the way.
Right.
And when you show up and are fully present and allow the ego, the fear, the control, the thinking that you know it all, you know, then you can just let go and allow God, and life is kind of magical when that happens.
It is. And, you know, it was interesting, again, back to the moment of the accident, because I was like, I don't know whether just shaken, you know, like you're here and then suddenly you're over here and then you're back here, and like, okay, what do I have to do? I have to remember to get my registration and blah, 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 you know, and my whole body's just, you know, like totally shaking. And then I stopped and I got centered and I thought, you know, everything's fine, just, you know, but my body didn't stop shaking. And it was right at that moment that all these people came in, and they had the clear minds, and they just helped me with that until I calmed down enough, you know. But yeah, you know, it's just everything's fine, really, even though the physical can be upset, you know.
Yeah. Now, Penny, what is radical trust, and how does trust in general connect with transparency? I think we've been talking about this radical.
We have been, yeah. No, I think that it's really a commitment to trust the entire process of your life, right? It's not just, oh, I'll trust that person because they seem trustworthy. You know, it's like, I even trust the guy who hit me. Like, for some reason he needed that, you know, and I felt kind of bad for him too, because, you know, his car was damaged as well. And so, but you just have to make that, I think it's a decision. It's not just a whim. You don't want to trust something. You decide to.
Yeah. And you know,
then what you do, you build trust. You know, people say, oh, we have to build trust. Well, when you choose to do it, then it proves itself to you, and then more of it comes. And then when you have a lot of trust, you have openness, right? So at that point, then more of you, the true you, can flow through, and then you become more talented, have more genius, you know, things work better for you, more synchronicities. So trust really is a state that opens you to being the soul, I think.
Yeah, and I know when I talk to my clients about trust, they'll go, well, but I don't trust that person. And I'll point out to them, the only person that you ever really have to trust is yourself. Because when you tune into your own intuition, to your own soul guidance, your soul is going to guide you, you know, to the people and places and situations that are in your spiritual path, that are for your highest good.
Yes. And plus, I think you know, people show you who they are, and untrustworthy people, you know, they'll show you, almost tell you right up front that you can't trust me on this, you know, in some way or another. And then if you override that, you know, it's your problem in a way for trying to make them more than they actually are in the moment. And so, you know, I think that you can allow people to be what they are and don't expect more of them in that moment, you know.
Right, exactly. Just show that. Now, Penny, what is the bridge time?
Yeah, I talk about that in one of the chapters, is that I think that we're in this kind of difficult time period right now where there's a lot of fear surfacing from the subconscious mind of both individuals and groups and nations. You know, things that used to be suppressed and invisible are now coming up into the conscious mind of, you know, as I said, the country has a conscious mind. It's called current events, you know, and our conscious mind is daily reality. So a lot of those old fears are surfacing, and that makes it a confusing time because it looks pretty negative. Actually, we're clearing the clutter, but it's everybody, you know, is doing it, and so we're kind of swimming around in this sea of muck. And we have to learn to be centered and clear. So some people are getting very clear right now. They've used the acceleration, they've gone with it, they've cleared themselves, and they're getting really clear right now. I'm meeting more and more of them, especially the young people. And then other people are kind of there, they're getting there, they're working on themselves, they're still backsliding into negativity, but they know that and they're trying to work on it. And then other people are just waking up to this whole idea of the inner process that's occurring in the world. And then other people haven't noticed it or are actually afraid of it and are trying to control things and maintain the old reality, you know, by fighting for it, you know. And we're seeing that coming out an awful lot in politics right now, you know. So it's challenging to stay clear because we do get knocked off center very easily by the news or by other people who are in negative states, like I did yesterday, you know. You know, so it's all about just being kind to ourselves, I think, and say, okay, I backslid a little bit. I noticed I was into negative thinking. Now I'm back because that's not where I want to live. I know what I like. I have a preferred state, you know. And so it's just a practice of centering and centering and centering again and again until you retrain your body to that this is our new normal, you know, that other people can have space to be in whatever state they're in, and I don't have to match their vibration. You know, I don't have to lower myself and commiserate with people just so that to get along with them. I can hold my own and let them maybe come up to me if they want to. And if they're not ready, they won't, you know. Yeah. So it's sort of like granting freedom to everything and trust again the process of the evolution because it knows what it's doing.
Yeah, you know, my Tai Chi teacher has a great saying. He says that other people get to do whatever they want. You just don't want to be there when it happens.
Right.
Yeah. So, and again, this trust that we're talking about, I think the more that we become clear, and by clear for our audience sake, and I'm going to speak for Penny, another word for clear is neutral. So where you're not allowing your ego mind, your thoughts, your preconceptions, your fear, your prejudice to get in the way of your soul guidance. And again, this neutral is another way of putting it. You know, I think Penny would agree. If I'm doing a medical intuitive reading, I specifically put myself in the state of neutral so that I could read the words on the book, so to speak, metaphorically speaking. And if I can't be neutral, then I wait. For example, last week, there was a funeral for my stepfather. and there was a lot of crying, and it was a sad time for all of us. Well, I didn't work during that time. I knew I wasn't in neutral. So, we do our inner work, and part of the inner work, I think, is knowing when you can be transparent, like Penny's talking about, and when your inner clutter is really getting in the way. And so, Penny, what practices do you follow so that that teach you and help you know when you're transparent and when you're caught in the clutter?
I think it's almost a clairsentient skill, maybe, working with the vibration of your own body. For me, it's like I have learned to feel when I get very contracted, and it's like a button has been pushed or something. And then when I'm the other state, I call it your home frequency, where you're just feeling the soul and you're happy and cheerful and, open. And as soon as I recognize contractions, I try to, just take a breath, get recentered, get back in my body, and shift my state back to the way I like it. And that can happen within a second, when you get used to, and for me, I use cheerfulness as kind of a trigger. Other people use, some kind of flow or other textures or colors or something, but there's a certain state that will help me slide back into my, I guess you would call it an alignment or an integration of the soul in the personality. And I think when we get contracted, probably we've just jumped into our left brain and are in reactionary mode and forgot for a minute, but that's life. I have to remind myself, it's all about oscillation. We're clear, we're unclear, we're here, we're in our body, we're in our, imaginal realm, we're back, and so we do rock in and out a lot. And it's not, you don't have to have one permanent reality.
Yeah. And, since we're talking about, the process of learning how to trust yourself, again, part of learning how to trust yourself, I think, again, is knowing when you're not in the alignment. And Penny's talking about some ways where she feels that she's not in alignment. So, for example, there's a place in Costa Rica that hires me to do medical intuitive readings on people who come for their shamanic retreats. And I emailed the gentleman who hires me last week, and I said, I apologize. There's been a funeral in my family, and I'm not in a place to do the work right now. And he emailed me back. He said, it's perfectly okay. He said, I have a real appreciation about how you do the work. And so part of, I think, learning how to trust yourself is learning how to know when you're in your state of inner alignment and when you're not. And even those of us who are highly intuitive and who've done a tremendous amount of work to develop our soul guidance and our soul communication, part of, again, trusting yourself is trusting that you are human, that you do have emotions, that it's okay to be feeling and to even feel your negative emotions, your grief, your sadness, your regret, your anxiety, your upset. So you process that through, but as Penny says, to have a real felt sense of your own inner alignment, to know what your home base feels like.
Yes. And I think we all have, I call it sometimes your truth signal and anxiety signal. They're like actual feeling states in your body. Like an anxiety signal or a danger signal could be a really tight solar plexus, like a knot in the pit of your stomach, and a truth signal can be the chills running down your arms, or something warm and spreading and feeling like you want to lean toward it. And people have different ones, but those are subtle tactile signals that we get, almost like the first response to something. Even if it's a food, that you want to eat it, or you need to eat it, or you don't want to eat it, you'll get or like I'll just suddenly feel full when I think of eating it, and like, well, I don't really want that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can look at something and go, ugh,
Uh-huh.
I don't even have to touch it or put my hands on it, or
Exactly.
just like, ugh,
Yeah. And so we learn to recognize the subtle version of those signals where it doesn't have to get really dramatic before we notice. And then just make decisions based on, I call it being deeply comfortable. It's not the superficial comfort, but it's like, am I all the way through and through with all my levels really aligned and just right with this option, and you can tell when you get that feeling, or when it's sort of, oh, it's almost right,
Yeah, then
we
it's you're
that.
trying to make it right.
That's right, and then you're forcing something.
Yeah. I have a good friend in Scotland who makes flower essences from orchids. And the way he gets his guidance is the floaters in his eyes line up. So I just mentioned that because, again, as we're learning to trust ourselves, how you trust yourself and how you get guidance may be completely unique to you.
Yeah.
So my friend, he'll simply think of a question, and if his floaters keep floating, it's like, no. And if the dots line up, it's like, yeah, this is it.
That's great.
So Penny, personal practices. So for myself, I practice a lot of yoga. I practice Qigong. I pray all day long. I meditate. What are some of the things that you do as part of your personal practice, your self-care, that allow you to remain more of the time in your home-based personal frequency so that you can trust yourself?
Yeah. I don't meditate that much anymore. I do reading, so I feel like I'm sort of in that state during those sessions. But during the day, for me, a lot of it is a practice of communion with anything around me. So I try to have relationships with objects and go into the objects, feel inside of them, and see they're made of consciousness, they're made of energy, there's maybe even beings that are helping them come into shape or holding them there in some way, that everything's alive at some level. So I really put a lot of attention into feeling into things, and the air, and the creating the unified field that I'm in all the time. It's in me, I walk through it. It's it's like all the molecules are sharing something, and I don't know, it makes me feel really connected, and then I relax, I guess. Granting life and freedom to everything is another practice that I do. It's like everything has its own kind of inner blueprint. It knows what it needs to do. And people and souls, they know what they want to do with their lives. And they can get complexed or confused because of all the overlays from the left brain. But deep down, I have seen this so many times, that when the soul is ready for a change, boy, you don't stop it. It's like it comes through and I snap the whip, and get everything lines up. So if you make the small changes along the way, you don't need the big dramatic whip snapping, when it's time. But truly, the soul does know how to get through. And maybe like an accident like I had, it's a cracking or of a wedge coming into the energy field or something to help things along.
I always say God only has to hit you over the head when you're not paying attention.
Right.
But, when we really are listening from the level of our souls, then you can just receive a little whisper of the spirit world, a tap on your shoulder. It's like, oh, yeah, I need to do a little bit, I need to be quiet right now. I don't need to be working so hard. Or maybe I need to take better care of my body, or I need to eat better, or I need to listen more carefully to other people.
Yeah. And the other thing I do is, I guess you would call it a mindfulness practice, but I notice what I'm noticing a lot, and why did I just see that? Or what's the message that's trying to get through to me in this? And I dialogue with, I call it my inner perceiver. So that I say, I say, well, oh, why did this happen? Oh, okay, this and that. And sometimes I write it out in my journal. Sometimes I just check in and get insights throughout the day. But I guess it's like you praying throughout the day. That's kind of my prayer. It's like, let me stay connected and feel the higher reason and for this, or the higher explanation for why these things happen. And don't get too stuck in low level explanations for life, you know? So, and I try to maintain, it's like, you know, when you think about yourself, you have a kind of place of residence, a level that you perceive from. And when you start identifying as the soul, your level is like, it moves to like you're in the upper level of the house looking down or at everything all around you, but you're also down here in the ground, in the earth. And I'm aware of that perspective now a lot more often, like whether I'm down at this level or whether I'm, you know, at this much more comprehensive understanding. So I try to always take that stance of being at that other level and then still being here totally in the world. And it's not a holier than thou or anything like that. It's just, I don't know, it's like a statement of truth. I'm in both places, you know, we all are.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, when you're, one of the ways to know when you're at that, you know, we'll call it looking at the big picture. When you agree that it's like the macro level, is that you come to a real experience, a real knowing and real feeling that it's all God, and I'm using that word, and if it's all God, it's all good. So whatever you want to use for that, it's all this universal energy. It's all this one energy. And within this one energy, there are different vibrations. That's why if I need salt, I don't want the pepper. And if I want the pepper, I don't need the salt. So there are these different vibrations, but it's all one energy and it is all good. So I think that's one of the ways you can tell and you can trust that when you're in this state of higher knowing, is you have that feeling and knowing and experience that it's all good, even if you don't really know why yet.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, I really find myself sometimes saying, hey, it's all good. You know, it's like, and then I go, oh, wait, I'm saying that. Interesting that I'm saying that out loud.
Yeah. Even if sometimes we see, you know, truly horrific things that happen in the world. And I think part of it is to awaken our sense of contrast. Like, that offends my principles. This is not what I value. You know, I'm specifically thinking right now of the practice of separating mothers from children.
Yeah.
And, you know, that offends many of us. But again, but it also awakens our sense of contrast. Now, Now, Penny, what is liminal space and why is it important?
Liminal space, actually, liminal means the threshold. So liminal space is, I think, what happens before you make a change and what happens immediately after. It's like going through the doorway, you know, and so at the end of a cycle of creativity, when you've achieved results, there's that time where you have to let go of your creations and say, well, that was nice. I'm satisfied. I did a great job. This was interesting, blah, blah, blah. And then go blank, let it go. And you enter into the liminal space, which is like, you know, like the caterpillar in the chrysalis. You have to go back into the imaginal realm to allow the old pattern to dissolve and a new pattern to start, you know, gestating, that you're going to start merging with for your next cycle of creativity. And if you don't rest, if you don't allow spaciousness, you really can't get into that next stage, because then you'll just start repeating what you did in the past. You know, you have to allow hey, the next phase could be totally different. It could be a surprise, or maybe it is more of what I did before, but at least it'll be totally fresh perspective on it, So, and those times of liminal space, people hate that a lot of times. The left brain hates it, let's say, because it seems like, oh, nothing's happening and I should be busy, and willpower needs to be exerted here to make things happen. And it's really, if you find yourself doing that, it's the exact wrong thing. It's more that you wait, it's like a fruit getting ripe. It stays on the tree until it's ripe, and then it just falls off on its own, and that's the way we are in terms of our creativity. Things will build up, and you'll get the inspiration and the curiosity and the excitement and enthusiasm, and then there you go, and you're into a new phase. But you wait, and you be. This is where you reconnect with being, with spirit, and it's so important.
So Penney Peirce, as we conclude our discussion about how to learn how to trust ourselves, any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, I like just the idea of visualizing ourselves as having transparent energy inside, that we're filled with, if we're filled with soul and we are the soul, then how do you picture that? And for me, it's always diamond light. So the idea of having a diamond light body that's inside our physical body, that's sourcing every single part of our body, is very relaxing to me. So I have diamond light cells, I have diamond light blood, I have diamond light bones and diamond light heart and brain and eyeballs and everything. And I imagine that inner blueprint of a self that has no blockages, that is totally connected with everything, and no contractions. And I'll just put my attention on that, and immediately it opens me back up again.
You've been listening to Penney Peirce. Penney is the author of 10 books, including her most recent book, Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Extended Human Capacity. You can find out more about Penney at penneypeirce.com. This is Catherine Carrigan. You've been listening to The Natural Healing Show, and you can find out more about me and my work as a medical intuitive healer and my 8 books at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. And remember, when you learn how to trust yourself, natural healing happens. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.